How come? Why is it impossible? Why can it not happen that a Buddha cannot teach in an impure assembly? I must say, I think there are other occasions when he does. There are times in the suttas where he teaches to all and sundry, and he doesn't seem to mind who's there and whether they're listening or whatever, but he does hear. And I think that's because it's his disciples. There he is with his disciples, and he expects a much higher commitment from them. And he expects them to be pure, ethically pure, when he teaches them. You know the beginning of the Ratnaguna Samchayagata. Most of us know the beginning of that. It starts off with call forth as much as you can of love, of respect, and of faith. And then he says, I don't know the rest off by heart, but he says something like, clear away all your taints. Listen to the gentle voice of the Buddhas. Or no, listen to the voice of the gentle Buddhas. Taught for the welfare of the world, for, I can't remember, it's something like that. But anyway, but you can, so you see that before you even start to read that sutta or that sutra, you need to purify yourself. You need to be in the right state to listen. So it's probably similar here. And I was thinking of the great stupa at Sanchi. You've probably seen photographs of it. Some of you maybe even been there, but the great stupa at Sanchi, it's got 4 entrances. And if you take a cross section, if you look down at it and you take a cross section of the floor, it's a mandala, basically. And mandalas have 4 entrances: east, west, north, south. You can come in any way. And above the gates or the doors, it says Ehi Pasiko. Ehi meaning come, Pasi to see. So come and see. Come and see for yourself whether the Dharma works. So it's very inviting, but also guarding every door is a Dharma pala. Pala means guardian. So a guardian of the Dharma, and they're really fierce. You've probably seen pictures or statues of them. You get great ones in Japan. They're really fierce, muscular beings, like with a hammer in one hand, and they're stopping any negative influences from coming into the mandala. So come and see, but don't bring your negative stuff with you, yeah? Because when you're in the mandala, it's a kind of pure, purely positive place. So that's somehow this monk has got in. He must have sneaked in somehow into the mandala. I just wonder how on earth he got there. How can it be that amongst all the Buddhist disciples, there they are sitting there through the night, how can this man have got in? It's quite wrong, yeah? But he did somehow. So there he is. And the thing is that the Buddha was quite capable of being a Dharmapala himself. I've been at pains to tell you this, haven't I? That sometimes he could be really fierce with people. He wouldn't let people be unpleasant to him. He just came straight back at them. So he could be really fierce. And that's correct in certain instances, but it's quite wrong in other instances. So when you're teaching the Dharma to out there, or when you're standing up for the Dharma out there, you have to be a Dharmapala. But within the Sangha, you have to let go of all that. And within the Sangha, you're a Dakini. And a Dakini is a goddess, completely red and completely naked. And they stand for love and affection and so on. So within the Sangha, we have to relate to each other through our Dakinis rather than through our Dharmapalas. So within the Sangha, all communication is love and affection. So the Buddha, it would be quite wrong for the Buddha to have shown his Dharmapala side in that situation. It was just completely wrong. So he couldn't teach. He was unable to teach. So let's go back to that. Why? Why couldn't he just teach anyway? It isn't unfair on all these monks, don't know how many of them are waiting all the way through the night. It's an unfair one. Why couldn't he just teach anyway? No, he couldn't. He said it's impossible. So obviously I've been thinking about this. How come? And I was thinking a couple of things, really. I was thinking about, as you know, I often revert to musical analogies and metaphors. And all classical musicians, and it might be so with other musicians as well, but I'm particularly interested in classical music, they will tell you that the audience is really important. A good performance needs not just good players, but a good audience. You can't really play very, very well in front of a distracted audience. You just can't do it. You can't go to your highest. So you need a really good audience. And last year, it might have been early this year, can't remember, I went to Stoller Hall to see the great Canadian pianist, Angela Hewitt. Can you imagine? Angela Hewitt playing Bach's Goldberg Variations. Now, I've mentioned Bach's Goldberg Variations in the first of my talks. I was saying that Glenn Gould, one of his CDs was called The Sense of Wonder, and it was his version of the Goldberg Variations. And I was thinking about that today, and I was thinking that our concert was beautiful. We had front row seats, and there she was, just a few feet away from us. She played the whole thing off by heart. It was beautiful. And then she finished, and she just sat there like this, didn't move. And no one moved. The whole hall was completely silent, and it was one of those silences which you could hear a pin drop. It was charged. And you know how they do it with these musicians. They just stay like that. And then she just dropped her arms, meaning, okay, you can clap now. So we all did. Everyone clapped and whooped and everything, and she got loads of encores. One of her encores, she came back, and she asked us to stop clapping, and she said, a good performance relies on a good audience, and you're a really great audience. So she clapped us, she applauded us. So we applauded her, and everyone was applauding everyone else, which is how it should be. So we know that's the case. So it's the same with the teaching. So a few years ago, the last time Sangharachka ever came to Manchester, he hosted an evening for order members, a question and answer session for order members at the Buddhist Centre, and I was the compere, the MC. And I read the questions out to him and followed up with questions and so on. And it was a great evening. At the end of the evening, I said to him, oh, Bansi, that's so inspiring. It was really great. And he said, yeah, of course. When the orders gets together, it's really inspiring. And I think what he meant was he was inspired by the audience. And when you're inspired by the audience, you rise above your usual teaching and you get better and better. And then the audience like that more and so on. It's become a positive spiral upwards. So partly I think the Buddha felt that he couldn't teach well with someone there who was out of harmony with him. Then I was also thinking of the Gawava Sutta, the first week of these talks in the question and answer session. And it was all about wonder. And Vishankar asked a question, and he was talking about the Gawava Sutta and the fact that in the days after the Buddha's enlightenment, he had lots of thoughts, he was reflecting a lot, and one of his reflections was, who in the universe can I revere? Who can I look up to now? And he looked around the whole universe with his divine eye, and he couldn't see anyone he could look up to, and for him, that was bad news. He wanted someone he could revere. So he thought, well, what can I do? And then he thought, I know, I'll revere the Dharma. I'll revere the Dharma, not the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path, not the words of the Dharma, but the Dharma itself, the Dharma Niyama, you could say, the principle, the eternal Dharma. I'll revere that. So I was thinking about that today, and I thought, what's happening here is the Buddha is with his immediate disciples. They're meditating throughout the night, very high states of consciousness, very, very refined. And they're kind of dwelling in the Dharma, the true Dharma. They're revering the Dharma together, you could say. And it's very, very sensitive. But there's someone there who's out of harmony with all that. And it's like someone playing a bad note. And the Buddha realizes this, and he because for him, he reveres the Dharma. The Dharma is really valuable to him, really precious. To teach in that situation would be to degrade the Dharma. It would be degraded if he tried to teach it. And he couldn't do that to the Dharma. He just couldn't do that. So he thought, I can't say anything in this situation. You notice that what he says is very simple, isn't it? He doesn't give a long explanation. He just says, Ananda, the assembly isn't pure. What can I do? So that's what happens. And so then that's the story. And then he gives this teaching. And the teaching itself, let's just have a look at the teaching. The third strange and wonderful thing. Let's go back to there. The ocean does not tolerate a dead body. But then the Dharma, in the same way, if an individual is unprincipled, evil, it's horrible to say this actually. I won't say it all. You heard that before. If someone's not there, if they're not ethical, that's what I'm going to say. Not a contemplative, not a monk, even though claiming to be one. Not leading the holy life, though claiming to do so. So, going to go back to last week, I mentioned the Kasi Sutta and the Buddha talking to this horse trainer and saying, Kasi, the horse trainer, saying to the Buddha, asking him, what do you do with someone you can't train? And the Buddha says, I kill him. And then, of course, shock horror, the Buddha doesn't kill people. And Kasi says that, you don't kill people, come on. And the Buddha says, yeah, I don't kill them. But what he says is very interesting. If I can find it. It's true, Kasi, I don't kill people, but if a person doesn't submit to the training, I don't regard them as being worth speaking to, or even admonishing, or even giving feedback to. This is what it means to be totally destroyed in the doctrine and discipline. Yeah, this is what it means to be totally destroyed. It's not the Buddha kills him or destroys him. The person is, as it were, dead already. They're dead to the Dharma. They're destroyed as far as the Dharma is concerned. So I think that's, last week I was talking about Badali, poor Badali, who refused to take up one of the Buddha's rules. And then the Buddha really told him off later, poor man. But the Buddha didn't ignore him. He actually taught him. And the same with the notorious group of 6. The same with them. They said, we're not going to do that rule. Hell with that. And then the Buddha spoke to them. He spoke to them for a long time. Even though they're really, the group of 6 are notoriously recalcitrant, lazy bunch of people. But the Buddha didn't give up on them. He just carried on talking to them and tried to bring them round. So even with the most recalcitrant, lazy people, they're still tameable. But someone who's just not into it, you can't do anything with them. So then another thought I had was, it doesn't seem very compassionate. You might have thought that. How compassionate is that? This monk's there, he's pretending to be a monk, he's not really one. And the Buddha just, Moggallana kicks him out and locks the door. Okay, you're out of here, get out of here. How compassionate is that? I don't really know how to answer that one because it doesn't seem very compassionate. Yet the Buddha was apparently all compassionate. So maybe the Buddha could only do what he could do. What could he do about this man? There's nothing he could do. And perhaps in the long term, it was a compassionate thing to throw him out, to get him to see sense. It doesn't happen with this one as far as I know, but many times it happens. It's one of the good things about looking up suttas on access to insight or sutta central. There's often a note from Thanissaro or someone saying, this person comes up again later. And they saw the error of their ways and they've come back as a bhikkhu. Or in a previous life, they've come back as a bhikkhu. But this bhikkhu here, or so-called bhikkhu, he's not even named, so we don't know what happens to him. But sometimes You just have to say, no, enough, you need to go. And that might bring someone to their senses, or it may not. I don't know. You'll have to make of that what you will. Now, there's something here that I think is really, really important. This man is claiming to be a bhikkhu, even though he's not. So first question is, how did that happen? Well, we don't know how it happened, but it seemed to have happened. The next question is, why? Why would anyone do that? Why would anyone pretend to be a Buddha, a bhikkhu, even though they're not one? Why would they pretend to be practicing the Dharma, even though they're not? The first thing that comes to me, the first possible answer is that by then, late on in the Buddha's ministry, he was really well known. The Buddha was really well respected. And so any of his bhikkhus would have been well respected too. So they've been well looked after. So when they went begging for food, they'd say, oh, this is one of the Buddha's disciples, give him some food. So by then, it could be that lazy people were thinking, I could become a bhikkhu and there's free food every day, you know, and I don't have to do any work, just hang about the rest of the day. That sounds like a good option to me. So yeah, I'll go in for that. Possibly could be that. There's possibly another explanation. As many of you know, I used to be involved with breathworks. And in fact, I was the head of training, the director of training. And in the early days of breathworks, what happened was we get people from Ratna who had years and years of meditation practice wanting to put that to good use to help other people. So we trained them. And then people from other Buddhist movements used to come and we trained them too. But then after a few years, mindfulness got really, really popular, didn't it? In the whole world, really. And nearly everyone wanted to be a mindfulness trainer all of a sudden. And you get these people, what would happen is a lot of health professionals trained with us, but what would happen is sometimes they'll be in the office and there'll be a phone call. Oh, Ratnaguna, you should speak to this person. They want to talk to you about the training. And I would talk to them and they'd say, I'd like to be a mindfulness teacher. So I'd say, oh, okay, how long have you been practicing mindfulness for? I haven't. I've never practiced mindfulness. Oh, right, okay. Well, why do you want to be a mindfulness teacher? Oh, it sounds like a really good thing to do. I really felt like telling them off at that point and saying, what the hell are you doing? You can't just become a mindfulness teacher because you don't even know what it is yet. Anyway, I didn't, for obvious reasons. But I would say to them, well, look, what you need to do first is go on a course, learn mindfulness and practice for at least a year. Come back to me in a year's time and we'll talk about it then. But I do that, and guess what happened in a year's time? They came back. And the problem was, it was the cart before the horse. They wanted to be a mindfulness teacher before they even knew what mindfulness was. So then they practiced mindfulness so that they could become a mindfulness teacher, which is a very odd thing to do from my point of view. So I share that with you because I think there may be something going on here that maybe because the Buddha's disciples were respected, and it might be that some people think, I'd like to be a Buddhist disciple, without really knowing what it means to be a Buddhist disciple. They just want to be one. And so maybe that's how they became so. But I want to read you. Last week I talked about the Buddha's sense of humor. There's a nice one here. I just came across this week. It's really good. The Buddha's talking to a few people, and he's in a really light-hearted mood here. It's very different from this other sutra. He says, suppose, monks, a donkey follows close behind a herd of cows, thinking, I'm a cow too. I'm a cow too. But he is not like cows in colour, voice, or hoof. He just follows close behind a herd of cows, thinking, I'm a cow too. I'm a cow too. Just in the same way, monks, we have some monk who follows behind the order of monks, thinking, I'm a monk too. I'm a monk too. But he has not the desire to undertake the training in morality, which the other monks possess, nor in higher thought, which is meditation, or in insight, which the other monks possess. He just follows close behind, thinking, I'm a monk too. I'm a monk too. Probably you can't understand that. I can't understand it either. Why would someone want to do that? But perhaps that's what's happened. Maybe this poor old monk following behind thinking, I'm a monk too, even though he's not one. And it all ends very, very badly for him. Anyway, so where are we? Back to the sutta. So we're looking at this strange and wonderful quality of the Dharma, the third one. And the Buddha's saying, in the same way, if an individual is unprincipled and unethical and so on, not a contemplative, not a monk, though claiming to be one, not leading the holy life, though claiming to do someone, inwardly rotten, etc., etc., we'll pass over that. The community has no affiliation with him. Now, the next bit I really like. Even though he may be sitting in the midst of the community of monks, he is far from the community, and the community is far from him. Now, that seems to me to be really important, that there's an important part of Sangha is to actually come together bodily. We can't do that at the moment, but in a sense we're doing this now, coming together bodily, you know, physically with other people. In the days before the lockdown, we could do that. But just being physically in the same place as the other members of the Sangha doesn't in itself make you a member of the Sangha. And if you're not following the Dharma in the way that everybody else does, you're not really with them, not in spirit. And that can be quite a lonely place. I was thinking about this poor guy who gets kicked out. It must have been very painful for him. It must have been very lonely for him to be kicked out in the night. There you go, well, it's dawn anyway. Off you go, you're on your own now. But that was the actual position he was in. He was no less lonely when he was in the house than when he was out. And I remember, I think I've talked about this in one of the question and answer sessions, but when I had my time out of the movement, I came back through by going to a couple of days of the convention, and I spent a lot of time just with old friends and so on. Then travelling back in my car, back to Llangollen, and I was thinking, I've got a problem. These are my people, and yet I'm not practicing the Dharma at the moment. So how does that work? Well, it doesn't. It can't work. They can't be my people unless I can practice the Dharma. And then I had to work that out over the next year or so. And it's the same with any kind of human relationship, isn't it? Let's say you're married and you're unfaithful. Are you married? Are you really married if you're unfaithful? And I was thinking also that perhaps when Moggallana kicked this guy out, maybe that was a kind of an act of kindness, because what a terrible effect it would have on anyone to be in a state of pretense over a number of years, pretending to be what they're not over a number of years, pretending to be married or being married legally, but not really being married to that person. What must it be like for someone in that situation to be with their wife or their husband when they are with them, when they know that they're not being faithful? What a terrible effect that must have on your inner life. Must be awful. And it's the same with this man. It wouldn't have done him any good for the monks to just let him be there. I mean, it's not a good place to be at all. So yes, was there anything else I wanted to say? Because I'm trying to keep this short, aren't I? Yes, so we're going to go to the end of the set now. Now, this is a sutta from a text called the Udana. Now, I haven't told you what the Udana means. Udana means something like, well, it literally means expiration. It's a breathing out. The Udana is a breathing out. And it's usually translated as a verse of uplift, something like that. And at the end of every sutta in the Udana, there's an Udana. There's a verse of uplift from the Buddha, and it's in verse. And we haven't gone into any of those in our talks, but I'm going to today. Now, Sangharakshita did a seminar on this sutta in 1974. And unfortunately, the recording was lost. So he did it again in 1975. And I've known about this particular text ever since then. And the Udana at the end is very strange and paradoxical. The Buddha's not often paradoxical, but he does seem to be paradoxical here. And I'm going to read you the translation from F.L. Woodward, who's the first person to have translated the Udana. It's a rather outdated translation now, and there are other translations that are better. But because this is the first translation I heard, I kind of love it. You know, how you get to know a translation, you begin to love it after a while. So I'm going to read you this one, then I'm going to read you one or two of the others. Just 4 lines. So the Buddha says, "It rains right through the thatch. It rains not through the open. So open up the thatch, thus it will not rain through." It's a great little line, this. So it rains not through the thatch. The thatch is the roof. Yeah. Yeah. It rains right through the roof. Yeah. But it doesn't rain if there's no roof. It doesn't come through if there's no roof. That's the paradox. So open up the thatch, open the roof up, and thus it will not rain through. Yeah. This has been a very, very important text to me, a very important bit of Dharma. I'll just read you Tanisaro's. Rain soddens what's covered and doesn't sodden what's open. So open up what's covered up so that it won't get soddened by the rain. So the meaning is clear. The meaning is clear. What the Buddha is saying is, don't cover up your failings. Don't cover up your unskillful activities. Yeah. Do you remember a couple of weeks ago, we looked at a text from the Majjhima Nikaya, 10 things. And the first one was of few wants. Do you remember that? And the Pali was apicca. And it means a few wants, contented and so on. But it also means, if you remember, unpretentious. Unpretentious. So this monk, or so-called monk, was pretending to be something that he wasn't. So don't cover up. Don't pretend to be someone that you're not. Just be who you are. Just be open about who you are. And it's hard for people to be open. It's hard for people to admit when they've made a mistake. It's hard for people to admit their failings. Why is it hard? We're scared. We're scared of being rejected. We're scared of losing a position. We're scared of spiritual death, in a way. We're scared of losing what we think of as our reputation. All those things, we're frightened of that. So there's a sense in which we want to put a front to the world. This is who I am, even though you know it's not who you really are. And we think that will protect us. But it doesn't. It doesn't protect us, paradoxically. In fact, it brings on criticism. Because when you're pretending, it might work for a little while, but after a while, people get wise to that pretense. They realize that you're not really being who you are, and it gets on their nerves. It annoys people after a while, and so they begin to criticize you. They know that something's not right. They know that you're not really being honest. And so you're much liable to become criticized and attacked if you cover up. Do you remember Jonathan Aitken, Tory politician? He did something wrong, but I won't tell you what it was. And The Guardian exposed him. And he completely denied it. In fact, he came up with this famous line, the sword of truth. I'm going to wield the sword of truth. And he took them to court for libel. Unfortunately for him, The Guardian did a bit more digging and they found some proof, actual proof of what they were saying. And so Jonathan Aitken ended up in prison for 18 months, served 7 months of those. And He even got his daughter to perjure herself in court and so on. And he got his comeuppance. And it would have been much better for him if he'd just said, fair cop, yep, that was a bad thing to do. So everybody, I'll be punished for it, and so I should be. But he didn't. He put up a front. And it worked out much, much worse for him than if he'd have just admitted his mistake. It happens so often, doesn't it, with politicians? They often do things that they shouldn't do. And if they just admit it and just say, sorry, everybody, it'd be much better for them. But they don't. They pretend. Some of them do anyway. But I heard something more about Jonathan Aitken afterwards. I looked him up and was in prison for, I think, 7 months. And he took to Christianity. And he would have become a Christian minister. But he didn't want Christianity to get a bad name by him becoming one of their ministers. So he held off for a while, but eventually he did become a Christian minister, which I was really, really heartened by. You know, sometimes utter disgrace like that can put you in such a state that you kind of you have a deep insight into yourself. And hopefully that's what happened to him. I don't know, but hopefully it did. But that's the way the Sangha works. The Sangha works by not pretending to be someone other than you are. The Sangha works by just being, here I am, take me or leave me. These are my faults. These are my failings. These are the good things about me. And that's it. That's who I am. I'm doing my best. And when you're open about your failings, you're also inviting people to help you. So within the order, we have regular confession sessions. So in my chapter, we start off our chapter with confession. What have I done wrong this week? You know, and it's hard. You know, last week, I had a huge row with a friend of mine. It was really ridiculous. You know, we both got really angry. And then we made up afterwards. And immediately afterwards, I thought, oh no, I've got to confess this on Sunday. It's like so embarrassing. Me, 45 years an order member, and I lost it with a mitra, you know. And I thought, God, what are they going to think of me? Of course, when I told them, they went, oh, right, oh. Okay, well, how did that happen then? And it was fine, you know, because things happen. This is who I am. So that's how the Sangha works. The Sangha doesn't work by putting up a front and pretend to be what you're not. It only works by being completely honest, being open. It's a community of love, not power. And we can only really enter into the Sangha if we open up and forgive everyone their faults. So let me just finish by reading F.L. Woodward's translation of that Udana. It rains right through the thatch. It rains not through the open. So open up the thatched, thus it will not rain through. I thought we might do something different this evening. But before we do that, I'm going to hand over to Sila Bodhi, who's going to make an announcement.
Hi, thank you so much, Rennie. That was fantastic. Really, found that quite moving. Yeah, I just want to take this opportunity in rejoicing around Ratnaguna, giving this series of talks and asking you all to really think about whether you could also make some donations as you go through these talks. The Buddhist Centre, as you can imagine, is really having a difficult time. We're losing a lot of our income from lack of courses, from the bookshop not being open, and so on and so forth, many aspects. And this is going to be a strain, and we're really struggling in the team to make sure that the Buddhist Centre can stay healthy for when we all get back. Something we obviously very much want to do. So if you're feeling generous, it'd be brilliant if you could make a donation for these talks. And Sundeep said, we can't embed the donation thing in Zoom, but what she said she can do, and I think she may have done in fact, is put the link on the chat line shouldn't allow it. Yes, she has. So on the little chat box at the bottom, if you click on that, there's the link. So if you're feeling generous, please do help us out. Keep the Buddhist Centre running.